In a world full of misery, rage, and insomnia, there's a place you can go to just unwind. All you have to do is take a long walk into the mountains, and just past the black house, the secret garden, you'll find a small cabin. Inside that cabin, you'll find the Hole in the Wall Book Club. So now that the dream catcher's hung and the fire started, we invite you to pull up a chair and join the Losers Club as we explore the world of harmless little tricks and gyrating with Elvis. Hello and welcome to Hole in the Wall Book Club. I almost did it where I didn't
It was
try to
close.
explain it, but I caught up. I was like hitting a speed bump.
Yeah.
I'm Icy.
And I'm Mark the usual. Mark the reader.
Mark
I don't
the
know.
Reader. We figured it out last time, but I forget. It was like Absolute Mark or something.
No, it was, first of all, that actually almost sounds like I'm special, and I'm not. It was something like just Mark. I don't fucking know.
Markiplier.
What do we fucking do here?
Multivision, multiplication, markiplication. I'm out.
Yeah, right.
You've read the book later.
Yeah, right. That's the end of the podcast ever.
Yeah, we did it. We did it. We did an intro so bad even we couldn't stand behind it.
Right.
I didn't think it would ever happen, but here we are. Okay, we are getting back into Needful things, and I think you shared this experience, but it's been painful having to wait a full week on this one.
Yeah, I think I read my section, and because I had a lot of other stuff going on too, but still, like lightning speed. This was done over the holidays. I read my entire section, I think, in like 2 days, and then I was like, "Oh my god, I have to wait."
Yep.
It was tough.
Yeah, I couldn't sleep the night after we recorded. And peek behind the curtain here. We record pretty late. I think like we finished up just before midnight, and I finished most of it that night. I just couldn't sleep.
Man. See, I did that. I was super tired that night, and I actually did almost the same thing the next morning, though. I woke up, had nothing to do, and I was like, well, let me just read a few pages. No, it was not a few pages. I ended up reading a whole lot.
Oh, anyway. Yeah. My only complaint so far, my biggest complaint with this book so far is the book is freaking huge. And when I'm laying in bed reading it and inevitably doze off, it is leaving bruises on my face. This shit's vicious.
Yes.
But
it's very
jumping
abusive.
into chapter 9, we join our girl Nettie. And when we last saw Nettie, she had called in fake sick. Like she was actually sick to her stomach at this point, but yeah, didn't tell Polly why she wasn't coming. Well, didn't tell Polly what was going on between her and Myrtle. And we check in on her.
Her and Wilma.
Wilma,
Yeah.
right. And we check in on Nettie, and she has made a lasagna. And she is talking to her dog. And I gotta say, Nettie internalizing her externalizing all of her internal dialogue to her dog is just great. It's so simple and easy.
Right.
And the voice the narrator I'm listening to has for Nettie, the dog, is always pronounced Raider. And so like I don't know, it's almost radar. It's real good. It's real good. Yeah. But she basically is trying to convince herself to leave. She's gonna do it. And there was a bit I liked here where she took her key and like scratched her arm lightly to leave just like a little red welt. And she like thought to herself, when you get down that driveway, you're going to start thinking you didn't lock the door. And you're going to become convinced you didn't lock the door, but you can touch the welt in your arm and know that I made this when I locked the door. I thought it was kind of clever.
Yeah, I think it's clever. And again, I sort of talked about this last time. We did one of our show, and this is something I struggle with a lot, which is just this paranoia that I didn't do something simple. And I do this every night. I check my door like I don't even know how many times. Yeah, so I can super relate to something like this big time.
I can relate to the feeling, but not the specific locking the doors thing, because I live in the middle of freaking nowhere. And if I forget to lock my doors, nothing happens. Like a raccoon might have an easier time getting in, but they haven't mastered the knob yet. So for now, I'm safe.
Right. Also, it's very interesting. Again, she's been like stuck in her house for like days, right? And what she decides to do to finally get out of her house is to make a lasagna for her friend Polly. I felt like it made sense, but it was weird on so many levels. Mind you, it's the morning.
Right.
So she's gonna bring over her lasagna in the morning to Polly and pretty much say like, "Hey, I just figured I'd make you a lasagna today." Apparently I'm living in the wrong town, man. Because I
Right?
don't have this happen to me.
Yeah, I want a breakfast lasagna.
Yeah, right.
I'll straight up Garfield that shit.
Yeah,
Ugh. But you know what? A lot of what Nettie does gets written off as, Nettie's a little off.
yeah,
And it becomes an interesting kind of common theme throughout this. We see it a lot with the Nettie stuff, but I'm not going to get too deep into this. I'm going to get back to that later. But there's this recurring motif of little tiny details that are missed, and we keep getting pointed out to us by the narrator these details that are missed. But I'm going to get more into that in a bit.
yeah. Mhm.
When Nettie heads out, we get a quick scene where we see old Hugh Priest, who's been laying back in his truck. And as soon as Nettie leaves, he's like, okay, she's gone, and starts heading over to her house.
That's right. Mhm. And I think sort of switches back to Nettie or right at Polly's or
Through here, it kind of bounces back and forth between
yeah.
like Nettie and Polly and Hugh. Do we want to just tackle one of the storylines at once, or how do we want to do that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense because yeah, I think the book sort of like you said, I think it goes back and forth, but it doesn't really make sense to do that here. Let's tackle the Nettie storyline first, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So Nettie goes over to Polly's house with her lasagna. Polly's having a really rough time with her arthritis. It's bad. Like maybe one of the worst it's probably ever been.
Yeah, and it's made clear to us as the reader that like this is the worst we've seen it, probably the worst ever. When like there's this bit where she leans down and like laps a pain pill up out of a bowl like a dog. And
Yeah, because she
I
can't
think that
even
is
grasp the pill.
right. I think we're being shown her rock bottom here.
Right. And again, these are tiny little details that really help, right? Like it would have been it would have been sort of easy for a writer to say, "Oh, well, she's in extreme pain, and grabbing the pill was very painful." I really appreciate the extra care that Stephen King took here with sort of describing in great detail just how hard it was for her to just take a pain pill.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna we've already kind of gotten a feel for what's coming here, and we don't know yet, but I think it's very clear Polly is being set up to make some major sacrifice to get rid of her pain.
Yeah.
Like, and the little details like this are going to it's weird talking about this because we've not reached this point by the end of this section. But
Right.
we all know this is coming, but, like,
Yeah.
it's serving to set up Polly's decisions as understandable.
Mhm.
Like, if we were just told how much pain she was in, it we wouldn't really have internalized this at all, you know? But
Yeah,
seeing her,
and I
like
think that Leland previously had said that she's a hard sell too, right?
I don't remember if he said she's a hard sell or just that she was too close. I don't remember which of those it was.
Well, I think either or though. I think the huge point here is that Polly can't really be like she's not going to like it's not going to be a thing where she wants like a baseball card or an orgasmic Elvis Presley photo, right?
I've been dreaming about that Elvis Presley photo. I'm not gonna lie, like, I
Right.
might give a Big Putt-Putt sponsorship if it got me an orgasmic Elvis
Whoa.
Presley.
That's serious business. We might have to talk after the show about that. That's serious.
Ah, okay. Alright.
Um anyway, so yeah, I mean, it's just she's in a really really bad shape, and you start getting the feel for it. I'm a young guy in my 30s. I don't really know what arthritis is like, but this really helped me to understand. Like, holy shit, this is if you can't even grasp a pill, like, wow,
Right.
yeah, how far would I go just to have some relief from that? You know?
Yeah, and in this, we get, again, Polly thinking, "I would do anything to get rid of this pain,"
Hmm.
which we heard a couple like, last chapter? Some not long ago, like, we've gotten this repeated refrain of her hitting new lows each time and being like, I would
Yeah.
do anything to stop this.
Right. So Nettie and Polly again. So Nettie does this whole routine where she's trying to take care of Polly. I don't really think there's anything sort of note to talk about there. They try like these thermal mittens, which have never really worked for her or whatever. They talk about Leland Gaunt a little bit. Nettie
Mhm.
talks about how she might go over later and, let him know how Polly's doing because Polly was supposed to go too. And there's a point where in passing, I think Nettie's going into the kitchen and she just sort of says, and I can't capture this exactly, but she kind of says like, gosh, what she's basically talking about Wilma, and she's like, well, maybe she finally got the point. I haven't heard from her all weekend or
Right.
something like. And Polly's in such bad pain, like she hears it, and then the conversation shifts, and she just sort of dismisses it, has no idea what Nettie's talking about, and she even dismisses it as like, well, Nettie's weird sometimes.
Yep.
Uh,
And this is where I think we really start getting that repeated refrain of we as the reader are being shown details people miss in the moment, which
mhm.
I think with that being Alan, our sheriff's obsession is going to be like the driving thing there. It's
Yeah,
cool. I'm enjoying that repeated refrain. We get it a lot through these chapters.
right, right. So do you have anything else to sort of talk about, or do you want to talk about the I guess the Hugh Priest sort of
So
storyline
a
that's
couple
going
more
on at the same
things
time?
I think on the Nettie Polly bit. Nettie like says she's gonna go by the store,
Mhm.
and before she leaves, and I want to paint the scene for me. I was listening to this part through audiobook. I was driving at the time, and this section ends with Nettie telling Polly she loves her, and then Polly
Yep.
saying, "I love you too, Nettie." And then and that was the last time Polly would ever see Nettie alive.
Oh, yeah, how
And
did I
I
forget about this? I even
exclaimed
wrote that
some
down.
terrible words out loud
Yeah.
because that hit me like a ton of bricks. I have
Yeah,
grown to love Nettie.
yeah, so have I, and, I mean, she's not like, you're starting to get this picture that pretty much, like, Polly and Alan and Leland are sort of the main characters,
Mhm.
but, yeah, I really like Nettie as well, and when I read that, I was like, "Maybe they just are not friends anymore."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I like, there's
And
just, like, this little hope in my brain that is not logical at all.
oh, yeah, I did that so much with the sections on Hugh Priest as well.
Yeah.
Like, I knew exactly what was happening and was like, "No, it can't be. Nope, that's not what's no, we're being set." But I guess to get into that, when and these are interspersed between the Polly, Nettie
Yep.
stuff,
Yeah.
we get Hugh Priest's dream, and
Mhm.
God, what a weird dream. In this dream, he is on a game show and is talking to the foxtail.
Yep.
And this is just the much more aggressive version of Brian's dream. When he was talking to I'm mixing that stuff up in order, aren't I?
Yeah, we're about to have Brian's dream, but I think he Brian already had a dream earlier in the book, I believe.
Yeah, that was the dream I never want to talk about again, though. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
right.
nix that comparison. So Hugh's talking to his foxtail, and it's speaking with Leland Gaunt's voice and explaining, "Hey, here's the things you need to do. You still own
Mhm.
this foxtail."
Right. And I don't, yeah, and we're not told as the reader what that is yet. And
Right,
I think that Hugh Priest sort of says he just basically woke up and knew what he had to do.
right. And, I mean, and the only trick we've seen play out so far has been Brian throwing mud on curtains.
That's right.
So, Hugh Priest and his super innocent little prank.
Yeah.
He lets himself in, uses some old skeleton keys till he finds one that opens the lock.
Yep.
Uh, and then there is this very you know what? I don't even actually even know how long this section was because it felt like it took years,
Oh yeah. No, I felt the
where
same way.
he is playing with the dog, petting its belly, thinking about how great of a name it is for the dog and
Mhm.
just how great of a puppy it is, and he's got a note. And I didn't write down exactly what that note said, but he takes like a multi-tool and the corkscrew, puts the note through the corkscrew, and he's petting the dog. And the whole time I'm like, he's gonna go break the carnival glass. That's he's gonna use the corkscrew to break the carnival glass, right?
Yeah, right. Like I'm sitting here like, okay, so he's close to the dog. He has his corkscrew, and I'm like, okay, so I know he's not gonna like hurt the dog. So I'm trying to figure out. I mean, the carnival glass is sort of the logical thing because you already know how sort of how Nettie obsesses over her carnival glass, right?
Right.
So
But
that's not what happens.
now I knew it was gonna happen, but I still went up denying it until that corkscrew punching into the dog 3 times hit me like a punch at the chest.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I was in full denial the entire time.
oh yeah.
Like my brain was just me like, well, that's not gonna happen. And then it
It's
did, and I was like,
there was so much cognitive dissonance, which brought me into the scene so hard because Hugh the whole time is like, "What a beautiful pup, perfect little
mm-hmm.
pup. Oh, you're just great," and stabs the hell out of this dog.
Right.
And then just has the briefest moment where he feels bad. He's like, "That was this crazy old woman's only, friend in the entire world." And then he stops feeling bad because he starts feeling really paranoid that someone fucked with his foxtail while he was out
Yep.
killing a dog.
And so I actually just had a theory about this too that just sort of struck me. I think there's I mean, obviously it's the shock value of killing her dog, but I would bet, and I'm trying to think of the things we haven't even talked about yet. Yeah, I would bet that at no point in this book does someone destroy a gift or something that they bought from Needful Things.
I agree completely.
Because
I
I
think that
think
it's against Gaunt's code to fuck with that.
right, and well, I think more importantly is it. I feel like that is the sort of the anchor of power. I think that's how Leland actually controls these people is through these items. And while I think that if you did destroy an item, I think it would release Leland Gaunt's grasp on that person. I would go even farther to say that I'm going to make a prediction here. I actually think that's actually maybe a key part of the end of the book where they figure that out.
All right. All right. I have some wild theories later, but I'm gonna try to hold those because they're very Dreamcatcher related.
Yeah, because I think there's going to be a huge thing where Polly's going to have to be convinced to destroy. Well, we haven't got to that yet, but she gets an
Right.
item. We'll talk about it soon.
So what you're saying is you're officially giving up on the you're abandoning the theory that this is all gonna resolve by Alan making a shadow puppet blow Leland Gaunt so he forgets his plan. You're officially
Um,
dumping that theory because I'm not done with that theory yet.
I think these two theories really could happen at the same time.
Okay.
Really, I think that that's a part of it.
Okay.
Really,
All right. As long as you're not willing to let go of the shadow blowjobs yet, I'm with you.
right?
Oh God, this section. This hit hard. It was good.
Yeah, and again, I'm a little sort of low key scared about dogs, and but this is tough. Because Ryder, the dog, has sort of been a topic of conversation almost throughout the entire book.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I want to point out the way these are intercut is we get the scene that ends with, and that's the last time she ever saw Nettie alive. And then our next scene is the start of the dog stuff. So it is a 1-2 punch in the gut.
Right. And then you're starting to see like yeah, like all this stuff is happening sort of emotionally as the reader, but then you're also starting to see how this can be escalated quickly. Because before that, you're like, what could possibly happen to Nettie? And then you read this scene, and you're like, oh, she's not going to take that well,
Oh yeah, it is going to go rough.
right?
And then we get our next section, which is more escalation. We jump back into Brian. There's a transition where Hugh Priest is driving down the only person as he's going back to his house, and he passes Brian.
Yep.
And we find out a couple things here. Brian has another task to do,
Mm-hmm.
and Leland Gaunt has changed the rules. We
Yeah, right.
we hear about Brian's second dream, and in this, he's at a baseball game with Sandy Koufax,
Mm-hmm.
and Sandy Koufax is pitching and has, I believe, Leland Gaunt's voice from the beginning, or at some point it quickly transitions to Gaunt's voice. but it's very similar to the Foxtail dream.
Right.
Except in this one, Brian's arguing, I did my favor. I paid my price. We're square. And who Brian eventually starts referring to as Koufax Gaunt, which I really enjoyed that for some reason. It was super simple, but when Koufax started talking with Gaunt's voice, the combination felt good.
It did. And it was very reminiscent almost of The Shining, where his like Jack Torrance wasn't actually Jack Torrance in a way.
Right.
I don't know. Not exactly the same, but that's just what made me think of it.
But basically, Koufax Gaunt goes through some really schoolyard child logic to be like, I mean, did he ever really say only one favor? And eventually convinces Brian, like, you can't stop this. Like, you have started an avalanche through your actions. And if you stop it, if you try to stop, the entire town will know it's you.
That's right.
And
because now he's essentially, he's essentially like blackmailing him almost with the original prank that he played.
Right. And this kind of changes the rules completely. Because to this point, I don't know why, but I had assumed that Gaunt was going to be pretty clear cut in his rules. I thought we were done with Brian, basically.
Honestly, I felt the exact same thing. I really did. I actually had, for some strange reason, I had 100% faith in the fact that once you played your prank, you're pretty much good to go. And like you were saying, when you read this, it's not just Brian. You're realizing that this changes the rules for everything.
Oh yeah. And we don't get to see that happen yet. Because by the end of this, but God, I can't wait to get to the end because that last section, we get some stuff from Gaunt's perspective, and oof, I want to talk about that.
Right.
But I'm gonna try to speed up through a little bit of this because we got a lot to talk about.
We do. So, I'll give the quick rundown here. It's a dream. He has to do another thing. Leland Gaunt convinced him to do it. So he has to go to Wilma Jerzik's house, and he's basically told to take a bunch of rocks, write a little message on paper, tape it to each individual rock. And it says, I don't remember. I didn't write that down either. What it was basically like, don't fuck with me or something.
Yeah. It was to frame Nettie.
Right. And, Brian goes in and literally
I think it specifically said final warning on there. And that becomes important later.
She breaks every single window, or he breaks every single window. He breaks like the TV, which he still have like
throws
7 payments on.
Microwave. I don't know why the microwave one hit me so hard. Like if I was vandalizing someone's house, I wouldn't think to throw something through the microwave.
Yeah, it really did strike you, and it's just weird. Like why?
I threw one, I think, like at the stove and dented it. I mean, just pelted this place. And by the end of it, I think a couple other things from the dream that we should point out is that Gaunt eventually gets him to repeat the mantra. Was it Mr. Gaunt knows best?
Yes.
And the deal isn't done until Mr. Gaunt says it's done.
Yeah.
And by the end of this, he's repeating this mantra and feeling just good throwing these rocks.
Right.
In the same way he did with the mud.
Exactly. And he brings this up a few times, but he's like, yeah, you need to learn a thing or two about Dickering.
By the way, love the word Dickering.
Yeah, me too. That's why I wanted to bring it up. Leland Gaunt brings this up many times, not only to Brian, but to other people too. No, we're not done Dickering yet. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah, dicker me more, my friend.
Yeah. As long as it's not a blowjob, right? Because that gives him amnesia. So,
right. Just some hard dickering, no oral sex.
Right.
God, but anything else on the Brian stuff?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, he leaves, after
he leaves just bold-faced to the neighbors. Like one of the neighbors stops him and was like, what's going on over there? And he's like, oh, I went over to see if they wanted their lawn mowed, and they are fighting. Like straight, complete confidence in his lie.
Yeah, and I think even the neighbors like, hey, I don't think you should go over there. Like, that woman's crazy.
Yup.
She's gonna kill somebody one day or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
And that's pretty much it. I think the next scene is where Nettie actually goes to Needful Things.
Yep. And God, this starts blending the lines between what did they agree to and how much of this is brainwashing. God.
Yeah. And I don't remember exactly how this scene goes, but I think that Nettie expresses interest in something, and Leland's pretty much like, I think you're gonna have your hands full.
Oh yeah, she asks if there's any more carnival glass, and he's just like, "Nah, I think you're done with carnival glass. You're
Yeah,
not gonna need to worry about it anymore."
right. And this is super important because the thing that I learned in this section, and I was going to try to wait till the end of the section to talk about this, but I just can't. The things that I learned from this section is, first of all, Leland knows exactly what's going to happen in the future in a lot of these plot lines. Like he even goes, there's multiple times in this section where he's like, "Yeah, you can go over to this person's house at this time." He actually says it to you, priest, because they will 100% not be home.
Right.
And he
But
does this
he's
multiple
not always
times.
right. He knows the generals, but here very soon he's off by a little bit.
Ooh, I don't remember.
Well, okay, so this is basically him saying, "Nettie, you got a price you got to pay."
Yeah.
And it's a great written scene. I don't think we can do it justice talking through it because, like, her being in this daze and like being uncomfortable with some of the things he does and says, but like not fighting. It's really well done. Like, there's this part where he goes to like touch her with his hands, and she's like pulls back away from him, and Nettie's so obsessed with being polite to people,
Yeah.
and she just says, "Don't touch me, it's awful." And
Hmm.
still can't get up and walk away. Like, we're starting to see his true colors because his response to that, I believe, is on the lines of, "Well, you'll do what I say, or I'm going to make it awful."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so she's sent out the door with the key to uh, the Keaton's house
Hmm.
and a ticket book of traffic violations.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, by this point, I'm like, as a reader, I'm like dying. I'm like, okay, she has to go make another errand before she goes home and finds her dead dog.
Yep.
Like I'm like, okay, like all right, and that pretty much wraps up chapter 9. Um,
Oh, and she's given the same mantra that Brian was given.
oh yeah,
And something I want to note about that is in both cases, the moment we see them say that mantra, the um Mr. Gaunt knows best, and the dealing's not done till Mr. Gaunt says it's done, is when they just stop fighting it. And I don't know if there's some kind of magic here or if that is just they are broken to the point I can't say no at this point.
yeah. It's tough. It's really tough to say because I am now convinced that the majority of this comes from the item that was given to them. That's where a lot of the magic comes from. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how much of this saying is psychological or magical. I agree.
Right.
So
But yeah, I think it's important to point out we've now heard two people say it. Maybe I can't remember if we had Hugh Priest saying it as well.
I
I
don't
don't know.
think he did. I could be wrong though.
But
Okay, so chapter 10.
we check in on our favorite town selectmen and their family.
And
Oh, Buster Keaton.
and just an update. I mean, the last thing that he sort of had was, the winning ticket, the game about the horse races.
Yep.
Um,
He locked himself in his office, screamed at his wife. Mm.
which you pretty much find out he's not. Their marriage sucks.
Oh, yeah.
He's pretty much been an asshole for a long time. She's like absolutely miserable. We're gonna get into that more a little bit later. But the key thing is I'm gonna skip ahead just a little bit here. He does the winning ticket and he ends up winning like every single bet, but it's still
Yep.
not nearly enough to cover all the shit that he's embezzled.
But it is enough to give him a plan.
Yes.
He's decided, well, I mean, I'm gonna make a payment plan. I'm gonna be able to pay him off a bit, and they're not gonna hit too hard because that's gonna bring a lot of attention on them, and they're politicians, so clearly they're doing the same thing, and they're not gonna want the extra scrutiny. We can work it out.
Right.
And that whole logic train was so revealing.
You definitely get the feeling this guy is just not like like his whole plan sucks.
Oh, yeah.
for
Oh,
lack
yeah.
of a better word. Your plan sucks, dude. So
Oh, and one thing I want to just point out, the beginning of this chapter starts with just randomly first person narration again.
oh yeah, I
Just
forgot.
for like a couple paragraphs. It's like talking about like you might be wondering why there's so many towns around here with European names. Well, I don't know, but here they are. I'm like, what the fuck?
It was really weird,
I got
and I
introduction flashbacks.
yeah, it was really strange. I felt like it was one of those things where when I was in college or high school, um, it was one of those things that my English teacher would have almost immediately failed my paper on. The
Right.
random switch between third person for 200 and some pages, then all of a sudden a random switch to first person for a character you don't even know if they exist or not.
For a couple paragraphs and then to go back to third person in the same section
Yeah, right. It
on
wasn't
the
even
same
a
page.
defined thing. It was, yeah, just this is first person, and I'll just sort of shimmy on back into third person now.
It was
So
I just had to put it out because it threw me. It broke me a little.
yeah, it was strange. I think it's weird that this wasn't caught by editing, or maybe Stephen King was just like, "Hey, man, I do what I want."
I'm
So print it.
fucking Stephen King. What
Yeah,
are you saying? That
right.
stays.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Oh man.
after we get like Danforth and Myrtle, they're out eating this nice restaurant. We
And he's actually in a good mood, so they're actually having a good time. She doesn't even know what to think. She's like, "Wow, I haven't seen him in this good mood in such a long time."
there's one thing I want to point out. Like we're kind of glazing over everything from Myrtle's there for time, but there's a bit where like when they wake up, she looks over at Danforth and he looks at her and smiles, and her first thought is he's going to kill me.
Yeah,
And then he's like, "Hey, wanna fuck?" I mean, slightly more eloquently, but and then she's like,
slightly.
"Oh, alright." All those "he's gonna kill me" vibes totally gone. And God, that hit. What?
Yeah, it's it's the Stephen King. So
Yeah. I was, basically, Myrtle was a broken woman and has the
right,
tiniest reprieve because her husband hit it big at the racetracks, and he thinks he
that's
has
right.
a new lease on life.
Mm-hmm. Um, and yeah, so while they're out, okay, Nettie is on the way to their house. She gets there, and she has these traffic violation tickets, right? And here's the thing that absolutely just wrecked me because Nettie's is Nettie, right? And she has several screws loose. She doesn't just go into the house and put all these traffic violations up. She like goes in the house and starts watching TV.
Yup.
And I'm like, Nettie, like I'm like trying to yell at her through the book. I'm like, Nettie, you're in someone else's house. Please get what you have to do done and leave. Stop watching TV. She's
Oh,
like
yeah.
going through places. She's like checking out the house. Like I'm like,
She
you're not a
checks out, like, Myrtle's, like, underwear, like, "Hmm,
yeah,
I mean, it's alright. All the really nice stuff is old."
yeah, right. I'm like,
Like, wow, what are you what kind of judgment are you passing here, Daddy? You just
right.
spent 3 days not moving out of a chair, hugging a lamp.
Yeah,
Calm down.
so this whole thing was so tense. So she finally gets to motivation, and she puts up all these traffic violations. I mean, everywhere, chandelier, TV, like you get the picture. Like there's hundreds of them, and because she's wasted so much time, and you get this one quick thing of like Mr. Keaton coming home, but he has to drop his wife off somewhere real quick. So it's just him coming home, and this is where again where I get the feeling like Leland Gaunt has some sort of omniscience almost, at least for the people who he sold items to,
Oh, I have a theory,
because she gets
and
so
it's
close to
very
getting
fungus
caught.
related.
Okay, so yeah, she gets so close to being caught that Leland Gaunt essentially telepathically tells her exactly what to do and when to run.
Yep, yep.
So all right, so what's your theory on that?
Oh, I'm trying to hold it to the end because
Oh, okay.
it's part of my whole this is like who Leland Gaunt really is theory.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, so this whole thing's done interspersed with like a lot in the same way the whole Nettie and Polly Hugh Priest scenes were done. We're getting little
Yeah.
clips of Danforth and his wife and their slow way home where she drops him off. And God, yeah, there's this moment where when Nettie finally makes it out and runs across the yard, there's a moment where the narrator basically says, and if Danforth had gone into the living room right then and looked out the window, he would have seen her running away.
Exactly.
He wouldn't have been able to see who it was, but he would have seen who it was, that she was female, and this could have changed so many things in the future. And it's pointing
Right.
out these little things that people miss. And I just think we have that theme with that being Alan's thing, and I'm really excited to see this.
Exactly. Yeah. Because again, Leland Gaunt is setting up all these specific things, right? And they're very dependent on you thinking that someone else is trying to fuck with you.
Right.
And that so that and we sort of so obviously Mr. Keaton, Danforth Keaton finds all these traffic violations. They're all signed by
Norris.
Ridgwick, I think his name is.
Yeah.
Who's the deputy who he sort of pushed down earlier.
And these traffic violations, like the reason listed for the violation, start with things like being the biggest asshole in town or like the shittiest driver of all time, and then have interspersed like embezzlement, dipping your dick into the town funds, losing it all on the ponies. So it's this very specific to this is what you're doing.
And I think it even said like multiple times where that word embezzlement really stuck out to him because now he's like, holy shit, like somehow this guy knows.
Oh yeah. And he is flipping. Like his first thought is, I have to get these all down before my wife gets home. You know, he locks the door and he's like, and if she gets home and I haven't gotten them all, the bitch will have to wait. I'm using bitch because I'm not going to go so far as to say what he actually says. It gets fucking brutal. Like she'll wait and just goes tearing through the house, ripping these down.
Right. Exactly.
Oof.
And then he has this moment of paranoia where he's like, I don't know if I got all of them, which is fair. There's like 100. So
Yep.
All right. So then we switch back to Nettie, and Nettie's getting away. And I think she has a few close calls, but basically she makes it back home. And this whole time, all these other tense things are going on. This is the scene that I've been waiting for.
Oh, but we're not even there yet. We have one more. We get Polly going the needful things first. Because they saved the Nettie stuff for the very end.
I forgot that.
Wait, never mind.
Yeah, I have that. I actually have the Polly going in at the very end. Yeah.
Yep, you're right. I'm just mixing stuff up.
All right, so Nettie goes home and it's kind of dark. She can't really see anything. I think it's just like there's no lights on in the house and the sun's outside is really bright or something because I think it's still in the middle of the day. And yeah, her foot eventually hits this lump. It's her dog. She sees this scene. She obviously like loses it. And then we switch back. The perspective actually switches to Wilma, and then Wilma finds her house all fucked up. And there's some other details that are sort of in this as well. Like Wilma's with her husband, but she decides to leave because he's like watching the game or something. And she doesn't want to deal with it.
So importantly, she gets home alone.
Right. She gets home alone, finds this shit, and she finds all these notes on the rocks, and she knows who it is. And she pretty much says, like, no one fucks with me like this. Absolutely no one.
It. The note was, I told you to leave me alone. This is your last warning.
Right. And she grabs a knife from the kitchen. And then you go back to Nettie, and Nettie grabs a fucking meat cleaver.
Yep.
And they both leave their house at pretty much the same time. And even me, I've already read previously that Polly is never going to see Nettie alive again. And still, my levels of sort of tension here are like maxed out. I'm like,
oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I am like butt clenched. Like, what the fuck? No. Oh yeah. There's so much tension build up here. Because I mean, at the same time, this is being interspersed with Danforth finding the embezzlement notes and the ones that are hitting right at the core of it. And, like,
Yeah,
seeing these 3 tension points all rising up and, it's good.
exactly. And you're just getting this mental picture. Again, it's in the middle of the day, and you get Wilma leaving her house with a large kitchen knife, not a steak knife or anything, the largest sort of kitchen knife she can find. Nettie walking down the street with a fucking meat cleaver, and they
Mhm.
eventually meet like on the sidewalk halfway. And I'm like, man, this isn't really going to happen. Honestly, here's what I actually thought, and I have no idea why, because I'm reading a Stephen King book. I have no idea why I thought this. I thought that like Polly was going to leave, or not Polly, but I thought Nettie was going to like leave her house, walk across the street, and get hit by a car or something. Because the ridiculousness of what is suggested that's about to happen is insane.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm like, there's no way that these two women are about to essentially fight with meat cleavers on the sidewalk in the middle of the day. That's not going to happen.
Oh, but they do. And it
Right.
is vicious, and it is gory, and it ends
It's
with
fucking
both of them
brutal.
dead.
Right. Nettie's meat cleaver is literally stuck in Wilma's head. Like Nettie's insides are pretty much like spilling out at this point. She's been stabbed I don't know how many times.
I
And
This whole thing shook me, but I think it's important to understand that my first experience reading this was in the audiobook. And I need you to understand that we had entirely different experiences here
oh,
because they put background music under this.
ooh.
And no matter what you're imagining, you are wrong. I'm going to play a clip here.
Mm-hmm.
Herself into a sitting position against its post and held the knife in her lap, pointing upward. "Come on, you bitch," she snarled. "Come for me if you're coming." Nettie came, her mouth working. The ball of her intestines swung back and forth against her dress like a misborn fetus. Her right foot struck Wilma's outstretched left foot and she fell forward. The carving knife impaled her just below the breastbone. She grunted through a mouthful of blood, raised the cleaver, and brought it down.
That was my experience of that scene. I like to
Okay.
call it cocaine-inspired carnival music. It was a choice. So I just need you to understand where I came into that scene.
Um,
There is so much tension building, and there hasn't really been music in this chapter, and then suddenly I get hit with that during a knife fight in broad daylight to the death.
so there wow. First of all, I'm not even quite sure you're supposed to just hit me with something like that unexpected.
I felt a little bad about it, but I got hit
Uh
with it, so I'm spreading the pain.
yeah, that's fair. That music in no way at all should have ever been played during that scene.
Oh,
That is
absolutely not.
absolutely. And first of all, that I'm going to say two things, and no offense to Stephen King here. That actually sounds like a horrible narrator. By the way, just not forgetting the music, but the narration actually sounds pretty bad. And also, it actually kind of sounds like Stephen King.
I don't know if it is, but
I mean,
I
I
have to say
don't
the
think he.
narrator grew on me. It is older narration. Like, this is definitely one that's been around for a while, but he's grown on me a bit.
Yeah, I've seen Stephen King do like interviews, and oddly enough, I've seen him
Oh,
quote
yeah, it's
unquote
narrated.
act in movies.
Oh, yeah, it's narrated by Stephen King.
Oh, okay, so I'm actually right. I'm like, dude,
You
that
are
actually
right.
sounds like him. Like, that's crazy.
Alright, so Stephen King has been on our podcast.
Hey, I told you he'd drop by eventually.
Yeah.
And you know what makes me sad about that? He probably picked that music too.
God, I have not.
Let's
That it
pretend
broke
that
me
he
a little
didn't.
bit. It broke me a little bit, but I diverted us. So, yeah. God, that scene though. It's good. It's brutal.
Right, and I'm reading this, and they both are dead now, and I'm like, did that just happen? Because this bomb, I mean, this fuse has been sort of lit for a while now, and it just literally just blows up. Like,
Yep.
and you're like, holy shit. And so once I sort of calmed down from this scene, I don't know if you realize this or not, but once I sort of calmed down from this scene and it sort of sank in on me a little bit, I also realized at this point, we're not even halfway done with the book.
Right. Yeah.
This is one of the most intense scenes that I've read in a long time, And it happens before the halfway point.
Oh yeah, this is before part 1 is over.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, it's oof.
All right, so they there's an old lady who sort of sees it and she yells murder. And then after this, we switched before we go to chapter 11. We actually switched to Polly going to Needful things. She's starting to feel better. She took a pain pill. She used the thermal gloves, which she
Yep.
said never works.
And Leland Gaunt has found a interesting item for her. And the
Yeah.
way he introduces this is by saying, "Hey, I found this thing. It's not gonna work. There's no way it's gonna work. It's like magic. It's not gonna work." And basically says, "I want to loan this to you. It's the kind of thing you have to try before you buy. If you like it, you can come back. We can figure out a price. We can dicker about it."
Yeah, and I think that's part of maybe not his magic, where he seems always very authentic. Like, hey man, I have this item. They said that it's magical, and I'm like, and he even says like, I know this sounds ridiculous and crazy. I don't really think I believe it either, but at some point, it's worth a try, right? Like, what's the
Yeah.
worst? It's just something you wear. If it doesn't work, then
So it's a thing called an Azka. It's basically like a small metal thing, ancient Egyptian, and sounds like dusty slithering when you put it on.
yeah,
What a
that was,
description.
that was pleasant, right?
But this scene's really well done. I really enjoyed reading this. I'm gonna like kind of speed through it just to hit the plot points. But
Yeah,
definitely a great scene. Like getting the little tug of war between him and Polly was really good. I enjoyed this. But I think the key things we take away from this is he tells her to wear it, see if it helps her pain, and not to take it off because he says that it is a cumulative effect of how much it helps while you're wearing it. But if you take it off, all the pain comes back at once. Which
and then you have to start over.
yep.
Yeah,
And I bet that won't be a plot point later,
yeah, right.
especially because it's on trial and she hasn't paid for it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say it creeps or anything, but
Yeah, it feels a little creeping.
yeah.
And Polly feels a bit ridiculous about it, but wears it anyway, is
Yeah.
basically how that ends.
Quick side note. I'm so excited because obviously It Creeps was a huge part of The Shining, and it literally didn't mean anything in the movie. So I'm really excited to eventually watch the Needful Things movie, and none of these important things are probably in the movie. I wouldn't even be surprised if Leland Gaunt doesn't even own a store in the movie
I
at
bet
all.
Polly doesn't have arthritis.
Yeah, it's probably just I don't even know what it is.
I just really like lemonade. I want to find the perfect lemonade. That's the
Right.
needful thing I need.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, we
so
can write
great.
Stephen King movies.
It's so great that I'm already dogging on the movie and I haven't even seen it yet, but
I'm pumped. I'm pumped.
it's whatever. Yeah.
And then from there, we get like a short scene. Unless you had anything else on there,
No.
we get a short scene with Myrtle getting home, and poor Myrtle. We just really learned about Myrtle in this chapter, and we've learned that her life is complete shit, and that today was amazing. And then she gets home, ready to like make out with her husband and make him fondue, and he's like, "Leave me alone, you stupid bitch."
Yeah.
And then she goes and cries and plays with a doll that she bought from Needful Things.
Right. Because she's like, that's her only comfort because the dolls don't treat her bad. So,
You know
all
what?
right.
We've said a lot of sad things on this podcast. That might have been the saddest thing.
Right.
That's her only comfort because the dolls don't treat her bad.
Yeah. I mean, I felt it when I was reading it. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, I felt sad for her, and I thought I was out of sad because of Nettie, but nope.
Yeah, this whole chapter was just honestly, chapter 10 like I know it was still in part 1, but chapter 10 really was a game changer for me. I said, okay, well, this whole thing is changing direction now. Like shit's getting real.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
We're not talking about mud on sheets anymore. Okay.
oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
and then
Right.
like jumping ahead a little bit, but by the end of 11, we've got Gaunt heavily implying that isn't the plan. Like the Nettie Wilma stuff isn't even really a part of the plan. It was just a test to see how much control he had.
Yeah. Right.
Oof.
So you want to go ahead and jump into chapter
Yeah,
11?
I think 11 is something we can go through fairly quickly. But we start in at Alan at the morgue. He's getting real introspective, basically about that, basically thinking through like what could possibly have caused this. And his real hitch is that it seems really obvious exactly what happened, but he doesn't want to believe it.
Right. And I want to save that conversation just a little bit because he goes into this much deeper just a little bit later.
Right. Right.
And yeah, so there's like this, yeah, it's the whole scene about they do like the autopsy and it's the crime scene, and you just sort of get this like it's sort of a long part, and it's interesting. It's just not really that worth talking about. It's just cop stuff, basically.
Yep.
Eventually they have a super long night, right? I think it's like 3 a.m. or something. Alan ends up going to Polly's house instead of going home. And Norris is at the station, and the dispatcher is about to go home too. And she's like, "Hey, you got a present for you, by the way. I don't know who dropped it off."
Yep. And she also mentions that Danford was in the station because she jokes maybe it was from Danford. It's a kiss and makeup present.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then we get a short scene where we find out Cindy Rose, who I wrote down her name, but I honestly can't remember who she is. I think she's someone we saw earlier.
Yeah.
As a minor character. She brought in this present for him.
Yep. And yeah, so he's opening this present up, and it's it's like he takes the top off. It has some like, I guess, some like tissue paper on the top, and he goes to grab like the tissue paper to see what the present is, and it turns out to be a rat trap, and it like snaps on his hand. He's the only one in the station. He's like extreme pain. I couldn't even imagine, honestly, how painful this must be.
Yeah.
To put your hand into a rat trap.
Yeah, those things are things that like can break a knuckle.
Yeah.
But he goes from this intense anger. And there was the note on the box just said a reminder.
Yep.
And he then decides, nope, this is Buster Keaton. That's who did it. He's an asshole. This is his style. I'm gonna deal with him. And he also decides not to tell anyone.
Yeah, right. He's pretty determined because he had a really rough day, and he's like, no, I'm going fishing tomorrow. So he hides this whole thing. He's good. He's like, I don't even care if this like swells up ridiculous. I'm going fishing tomorrow. I'm not telling anybody. Alan's had a tough day. I'm certainly not telling him. Yeah.
And then that thinking about fishing leads to some paranoia about his new fishing rod.
Oh, yeah.
There's a moment where he's like, but wait, would Buster be satisfied with just this? What if he broke into my house and snapped my rod? If he did that, I'll snap him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we go. Alan finally gets back to Polly's house. They have a quick conversation. I honestly don't even remember what it was about because I was so invested in Alan's internal dialogue after this.
Yeah, they basically, it's nothing too important. It's like Polly's feelings on Nettie, but it's not super plot important.
Right. So Alan goes over the whole scene in his head. He finally has time. He's about to like sort of doze off in his sleep, but then the case gets in his mind, and he starts going over the timeline in his mind of exactly what they know about Nettie, exactly what they know about Wilma. And he's like, man, like a lot of stuff just doesn't really fit that well because it would require absolute perfect timing on
And
both
a key to this
women.
is that if Nettie had stopped at Needful Things, she wouldn't have had time.
Right.
And Leland, when Polly goes in to see Leland, she asks, did Nettie stop by? I haven't heard from her. And Leland says, I haven't seen her since she bought the carnival glass.
Exactly. So he lies and says, no, I haven't seen her. But I mean, Alan pretty much gets to the point where he's like, it would require such perfect timing that this isn't right. Because again, he's bringing up things like, why would you, because the sort of the case is presented as Nettie finds the dog, then she has time to write, like 40 messages on paper that says this is your final warning. And then he's like, why would she then, after doing like writing a final warning, then go home, grab a knife, and then leave again?
Right. And
Like,
like he points out like maybe they called each other and that escalated on the phone. And he laments the fact that he can't get the phone logs,
that was
which I
the
think was just to
part
smooth
that
over a plot hole.
yeah, that was the only part that I didn't understand. He was like, yeah, it's not like the good old days where you could just get the phone logs. And I was like, why can't you now?
Yeah, it was
You
a
can
weird
do that
one.
today. Like, I didn't understand that at all. But
And he
where does
also has trouble imagining Nettie, who like the only time she was ever violent was the single time she stabbed her husband to death in his sleep, sitting down and writing that out a million times. Like he thinks of Nettie only as impulsive, not this methodical planned revenge.
right? And then he's like, and she doesn't even drive. And he's like, so how? Like, where did she get the rocks from? And then he's like, so she didn't carry all these rocks. And then he's like, so I guess she had to get the rocks when she got there. And again, so the more and more that he goes through the story, the more and more it sounds like bullshit. And we as the reader, we know it is, right? We know
Right.
it's all sort of concocted to look like it's just a feud between these women. And we also know that Brian the kid was seen. This doesn't come up. He doesn't know anything about Brian, but we do know that Brian was seen in the area of Wilma's house. So I don't know if that's going to come up later.
Right.
But we now have this. We now know without a doubt that this isn't going to sit with Alan.
Right.
This
He even
absolutely is
has
not
a
going to sit with
moment
him.
where he's like, I'm gonna canvass and see if anyone saw Nettie. Because she's still kind of talk of town because of being in a mental institution. People will notice when Nettie walks around. So that
Exactly.
might lead to the Brian thing. We'll see.
And well, again, I think when Nettie left Danforth's house, I think a few people saw her.
They said the only person that saw her was the other town selectman's daughter. It was where Danforth's
Oh,
wife.
oh, that's right.
It's where they
Because
stopped for her.
didn't she get like bloody somehow?
Yeah, she fell when she was like when she heard the car pull in, she like ran and tripped
That's
and
right.
slammed her face into the ground. There's a point where she like said like if it wasn't for that bit of carpet, I probably would have knocked myself out.
Yeah, it was strange.
Yeah.
All right, so we have we also have the beginning of what looks like another sort of I'm sorry, I'm sort of going off to the next part here.
I think
The-
we're good. Yeah.
we sort of have the beginnings of the next sort of what I think is going to be the next sort of disaster, I guess. And I for some reason I didn't write down who had to do it, but somebody left a note to basically the Baptist church.
Right. Yeah, Ricky Bissonette, who is a new character. And all we know about him is he's a pedophile. And
Right.
he wants pictures of an underage actress. And Leland Gaunt produces pictures of that's not her, but the resemblance is striking, and it's illegal to sell these kind of things. But I've got some terrible Catholic hate mail I need you to drop off at the Baptist.
Yeah, it was this whole scene was super weird. Well, what he wanted anyway. And yeah, I didn't remember exactly what the note said, but we get the gist of it, right? Like we know
It's
sort of the play here.
it's pretty direct and vulgar.
Yes, and we do know that the I guess the head priest or whatever of the Baptist church, he actually finds this.
Yep.
And he has a chance to read it. And then we sort of go into I guess the final scene, right? And this is our first scene with well, not our first. Well, maybe it was, I don't know. But this is where we just get Leland.
Right. The closest we've gotten to this before is when Alan was looking in the window at Gaunt's at Needful Things.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But yeah, this one we just get Leland Gaunt.
And this
he is
I loved a lot of this.
the bedroom. When we
Yeah.
finally see the inside of the bedroom apartment, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have any furnishing at all.
Nothing at all. The entire upstairs is completely unfurnished.
Yeah, I think the phrase "the only thing in the room were literal window dressings," and it was
Yep.
just the curtains.
Right.
Oof.
And then he starts getting into like what he's planning and what he's doing. And here's the interesting thing about it. He is talking about what he's planning on doing, and he says something along the lines of, I don't even need the souls anymore. I haven't needed souls in a long time. I just like the sport of it, pretty much.
Yep.
I just really enjoy
chaos.
doing this.
He wants mayhem. He wants to not be bored.
And this is really interesting because so that points at the fact that he is a collector of souls. And for some odd reason, he doesn't need them anymore because I guess he has so many.
But I have a theory.
Oh, well.
A dream catcher theory.
Let's
Do you want to finish this up first?
Okay, let's finish it up. And so he goes through that, and the very last thing that he sort of says is it might be about time to get an assistant.
Yep.
And you pretty much, he gives some clues that he's going to be sort of hiring on someone he's already sort of enchanted, I guess, in town to be his assistant. I'm not quite sure who it's going to be, but I have a feeling it might be Hugh Priest.
That's where I'm leaning. That would be my guess.
Yeah, because he's A, alive, B, he's not connected to anyone, and C, he's already willing to commit violent crime.
Right.
So
there's one other thing that Leland says here that really got me, and it's him talking about making this network. And then once he's sure the network's secure, he does a little test run like he did today with Wilma and Nettie. And then he wants to lay low and just occasionally send a little current through the network, I think is how he describes it, to keep things interesting and primed for when he pulls all the strings at once.
Oh, and he even does this real quick. I forgot about that. He does it at the very end. He digs his sort of nails into his skin or something just to send a little jolt into the network. And then you get this weird thing where I think like Cora immediately starts like vigorously masturbating or something to the Elvis Presley thing.
And like then Brian like starts having a nightmare. Hugh has a nightmare. And then something inside Polly's necklace like slithers around while she's asleep.
Right. And then he lets go of his own hand, and then everybody just goes back to normal.
Yep.
And again, these are all just his test runs before I really turn the juice up to max. And I was like, man, really?
Yeah. Whew. And then you turn the page, we get part 2, Deal of the Century.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so here is my basic theory.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the Dreamcatcher alien. This is years before Dreamcatcher. He is down here to research, understand, and connect better with human minds. This is the extent of his like he's infecting people with spores so he can telepathically connect to them remotely. That's how he knows where everything is. These are spoilers here, but the Dreamcatcher aliens are a fungal, like spore-based alien race that are all telepathically connected.
Well, there goes the book. I mean, geez.
Yeah, don't worry. They're still buttworms. You got them to learn about.
Okay, that's the main.
So this is like a recon mission to like better connect and understand the human mind. Whether or not he's still on book or is just really enjoying this job and leaning into it. That's the basics of my theory here.
I'm sort of in the he's a demon camp now. Or some demon or devil. You're talking about like collecting
souls. Sufficiently advanced alien appears to us as a demon. That's some famous dude said that basically.
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, we
like in
shall
the same
see.
way that major spoilers for a book you shouldn't read. Pennywise is an alien. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to like read people's mind, know exactly what they what makes them comfortable and at ease, exactly what they want. Hell, these items might not even be real. I'm not certain we've seen anyone interact with another person's items. They might just be like mind fuckery to make them think they have them.
That's true. Because, I mean, he does essentially conjure them out of nothing, right?
Right.
I mean, we know that there's nothing else in the store.
Yeah.
Like, everything upstairs is empty.
It's all adding up. That's a Dreamcatcher alien right there.
I can't wait to get to that book.
Same as the house in The Shining was a Dreamcatcher alien. You know what? Tune in for the bonus episode for that. I gotta work on that theory because I just thought of it.
We're really gonna have to massage that one a little bit.
Yeah, that's gonna be a work in progress. We'll come back to that one.
All right, so next section. What are we reading?
What are we doing? Next section that's this section. There we go. We are reading chapters 12 through 14.
Okay. 12 through 14, and again, this is the beginning of part 2. So all the shit that's happened is literally part 1. I can't even. If you compare this to The Shining, part 1 was like, "Hey, we're driving to the hotel."
Oh yeah. If you compare this to Salem's Lot, we've had more action in this than in Salem's Lot.
The entire book.
Yeah,
So.
if you read it twice, you would get close to the amount of action pages as you did in this book so far.
Right, exactly.
Which I don't recommend.
Yeah, please don't.
I do recommend reading this one so far, though. I'm genuinely enjoying this.
Yeah, this is, I'm hoping it doesn't sort of fall off the rails here in a bad way, but man, I'm really liking this. And one of the key things is having a really likable, well, I don't know if this is the right word for it, but you have a bad guy that I want to know more about. Like, I get excited about Leland Gaunt scenes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. And that's hard to do.
Between, in a way that
I
blocked this guy's name from my mind for self-preservation reasons, but in the way the big bad of Salem's Lot, when he was on screen, I'm just like, you're less intimidating the more you talk. Please stop.
Yeah. Again, his scenes were never like, he started out super scary, and then over time you're just like, okay, just do something.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else before we wrap it up here?
No, I gotta get to reading.
I know. I guess until next time, I've been Leland Gaunt. I'm a dicker around. Yeah, Dickering.
Enjoy the Dickering.
That was a strong outro. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of what we did here today.
Yeah, we did it.
Hole in the Wall Book Club is a part of the Icynewyear Productions Network, and produced and edited by Anthony Sheets. The music in this episode is Supernatural Radio by Kevin MacLeod. There'll be a link to his license and website in the show notes. If you want to get a hold of us, tweet us at Icynewyear, or send an email to icynewyear@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to tell a friend, or leave us a review on your podcatcher of choice. Word of mouth and 5-star reviews really help us get out in front of more people, and let us expand and do more things. More information on the show can be found on icynewyear.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.